Hi, this is Professor Favors with American Literature. So today's topic is on Nella Larsen's Sanctuary. And Larsen's work is part of Modernism and add to it Harlem Renaissance. This particular presentation lecture includes scholarly perspectives and MLA formatting examples. So this is American Literature, Nella Larsen's Sanctuary. This lecture is subject to fair use. So now let's discuss sanctuary. If you think about all those particular events that happened prior and that may have contributed to um, Nella Larsen's writing The Sanctuary, um, absent the Harlem Race Riot, which happened in 1935, think about this in terms of context. So let's think about some preliminary considerations. What is the meaning of sanctuary? What determines a sanctuary? Are there are there different types of sanctuaries, and how is sanctuary considered in the work itself? And then, of course, the strategies, as we did for previous lectures, we're going to define the sanctuary, interpret the sanctuary, apply the sanctuary. So let's define the sanctuary. On the southern coast between Merton and Shawboro, there is a strip of desolation some half a mile wide and nearly 10 miles long between the sea and old fields of ruined plantations. Skirting the edge of this narrow jungle is a partly grown over road which still shows traces of furrows made by the wheels of wagons that have long since rotted away or been cut into firewood. This road is little used now that the state has built its new highway a bit to the west and wagons are less numerous than automobiles. Before a lonely cottage that shrank timidly back from the road, the man hesitated a moment, then struck out across the patch of green in front of it. Stepping behind a clump of bushes close to the house, he looked in through the lighted window at Annie Poole, standing at her kitchen table mixing the supper biscuits. He was a big black man with pale brown eyes in which there was an odd mixture of fear and amazement. The light showed streaks of gray soil on his heavy, sweating face and great hands, and on his torn clothes. In his woolly hair clung bits of dried leaves and dead grass. He made a gesture as if to tap on the window, but turned away to the door instead. Without knocking, he opened it and went in. So there's some sort of familiarity with the man and Annie Poole. We have the name of a character who will become the main character in this story, in this narrative. And so there's some familiarity with her that for him to go to her house and then make a gesture is almost like he pretended. He made a gesture to tap on the window, but he knew that he could actually go into the house. So for some reason, he finds this house, he finds Annie Poole, uh, a sanctuary. It's movement. It's movement also in the sense of um, ruined plantations, right? This movement from the agricultural economy to a more industrialized economy. And we know this to be true because we're moving from wagons to automobiles. Okay. So the sanctuary has moved from people feeling more comfortable with the wagon to now people feeling more comfortable with the automobile because it gives them much more access to the open frontier. There was some initial sanctuary of comfortability with plantation life, but now that it has shifted because of the American Civil War, Reconstruction era, and other contributing historical um, events, it is no longer a sanctuary for him. I mean, for the world or for America at this time. So we have a main character, Annie Poole. She is cooking, making biscuits, and we have this person who feels free enough, to open that door without knocking. All right, so hastiness in terms of defining the sanctuary, the woman's brown gaze was immediately on him, though she did not move. She said, "You ain't in no hurry, is you, Jim Hammer?" It wasn't, however, entirely a question. Ah, it's in trouble, Miss Poole. No, I's in trouble, Miss Poole. The man explained, his voice shaking, his fingers twitching. What you done now? Shot a man, Miss Poole. True? The woman seemed calm, but the word was spat out. Yes'm, shot him. And the man's tone was something of wonder, as if he himself could not quite believe that he had done this thing which he affirmed. Dead? Don't know, Miss Poole. Don't know. White man or nigger? Can't say, Miss Poole. White man, I reckon. The thing about if he's running away, he's going to run to a place where he feels comfortable to tell this story. Of course, he's not going to run to a white man to tell this story because they are the status quo. But he's going to run to a black woman, a mother, because she knows the very system that he is running from. So there's some hastiness in his tone because he doesn't even know who he shot, but he shot someone. But he knows that even if he shot someone, if it's a white man, he has to find refuge. He has to find shelter because it's not a typical standard that a black man shoots a white man. So then the hastiness comes with the fact that he doesn't know who he shot, but he supposes that he shot a white man, and then he's putting Annie Poole in harm's way because if they're looking for him, they're going to come to her house or come to houses similar to her. All right, define the sanctuary appeal. Annie Poole looked at him with cold contempt. She was a tiny, withered woman, 50 perhaps, with a wrinkled face the color of old copper, framed by a crinkly mass of white hair. But about her small figure was some quality of hardness that belied her appearance of frailty. At last she spoke, boring her sharp little eyes into those of the anxious creature before her. Ain't what you're looking for me to do, and what you're looking for me to do about it. Just let me stop till they's gone by. Hide me till they pass. Reckon they ain't far off now. His begging voice changed to a frightened whimper. For the Lord's sake, Miss Poole, let me stop. And why, the woman inquired caustically, should she run the dangerous risk of hiding him? Obadiah, he let me stop if he was home, if he was to home, the man whined. So the man is a whiner. This could be um, Nella Larsen's perception of him, or he could be just this type of person who whines. And he's appealing to her sense of motherhood because Obadiah is her husband, is her son. And so this whine here is his sanctuary. He knows that he could change his voice into a frightened whimper and continue to beg her, tearing down her emotional defenses, and then appeal to her one more time using her own son. Whining for him is a sanctuary. It's a type of sanctuary for him. He knows, because to me, for a person to whine like this as an adult, they've been doing this for a while. They didn't come up with this idea of whining. It's like a toddler. They that toddler will fall out on the floor until you pick the toddler up. And so this whining here is, of course, Nella Larsen's writing, but there's something about this whining here that has a twinge of criticism, that the author is criticizing um, Jim Hammer, putting this old woman, 50 perhaps, putting this old woman, 50 perhaps, with wrinkled face the color of old copper, in harm's way. Define the sanctuary racial expectations. So Annie Poole side, yes. She admitted slowly, reluctantly. I expect he would. Obadiah, he's too good to you all no count trash. Her slight shoulders lifted in a hopeless shrug. Yes, I reckon he do it. Him special seeing how he allowed such a heap store by you. Can't see what for myself. I sure don't see nothing in you but a heap of dirt. But a look of irony, of cunning, of complicity passed over her face. She went on, still sittering and all, how Obadiah is right on you, and how white folks is white folks. I'm gonna hide you this one time. White folks is white folks. Is sort of like a social perception or a racial. It could be racially perceived, but it could also be socially perceived that as blacks within the South, they understand the exchange or dynamic between themselves and whites. And so white folks being white folks is just essentially white folks are going to do what white folks do. And so if white folks found out that a black man shot another white man, they're going to do what white folks do. And that usually includes some sort of retaliation. And so, knowing this foreknowledge, and which represents experience and expectation, racial expectation, she's going to provide him sanctuary. She's going to do it just one time, but in some ways, because we know how white folks are, according to Annie Poole, that one time may not actually be one time, but she's just saying, okay, just this one time. And so she's calling him a no count trash. Um, um, he's no good, right? And that her son is much better than him, but um, he shouldn't trust him either. So somehow Jim Hammer has found sanctuary in using the name of Obadiah. He has found sanctuary in using that name to appeal, but using that name in contrast to white folks being white folks. Of course, Annie Poole is saying these words, but they are both under the understanding racially of what they mean. All right, so let's interpret the sanctuary duty. She turned on him a withering look, but you allow you but you always been trifling, can't do nothing proper. And I'm gonna tell you, if they warns white folks and you, po nigga, I should wouldn't be letting you mess up my feather ball this evening, cause ain't I just plan went you higher. I can't read this. Often bubble all my life. So's Obadiah. Obadiah. I was powerful obliged to you, Miss Poole. You sure are one good omen. The Lord's most suddenly. Annie Poole cut him off. This ain't no time for you kin and fiddle and roll. I does my duty, and I sees shout no thanks from you. If the Lord had give you a white face instead of that old dear black face, I should would turn you out. Now hush your mouth and get yourself in, and don't get moving and scrunching under those covers, and get yourself caught in my house. Caught in my house. So the sanctuary is a duty. It's her duty to help him. That means it's a racial duty to help him. And so now he's performing when she tries to keep her distance by the way she talks to him, but then he tries to be thankful and grateful, but he's really not that. He's performing here. I'm obliged to you. You sure are a good omen, uh, most suddenly. But she knows who he is. That's why she cut him off. And basically she said, I don't have time for all this, sweet talk you're giving me. It's my duty. Um, no thanks to you. But there is a condition. If the Lord, if the good Lord had give you a white face instead of that black face, I would turn you out. So with the she would be inclined to not give sanctuary to a white face. That she would be inclined to turn him out, turn him over to the police. But the blackface, she has a duty to. So she's suggesting that she doesn't, her sanctuary is duty. She doesn't have a duty to whiteface. White folks would be white folks. Um, and the fact that he has a black face gives him more of an advantage with her, so that she goes on ahead and allows him sanctuary in her house. But he has more sanctuary because of his black face than his white face. Or if he was a white person, she would have to turn him out. So interpret the sanctuary cultural expectations. So Jim Hammer settled down to the racking business of waiting until the approaching danger should have passed him by. Soon savory odors seeped into him and he realized that he was hungry. He wished that Annie Poole would bring him something to eat, just one biscuit, but she wouldn't, he knew. Not she was a hard one, Obadiah's mother. Outside there was silence. He strained his ears. Nothing, no footsteps, no voices. They had gone on then, gone without even stopping to ask Annie Poole if she had seen him pass that way. A sigh of relief slipped from him. His thick lips curled in an ugly, cunning smile. It had been smart of him to think of coming to Obadiah's mother's to hide. She was an old demon, but he was safe in her house. So we now know that he already had this house in mind to use as sanctuary. And he already knew, in a cultural sense, that he could use his house because it's Obadiah's mother's house. And so this is sort of, in my mind, premeditated. I don't know if the killing of someone is premeditated. His killing of someone is premeditated. But knowing where he could go in terms of the sanctuary that he can go to, that was premeditated. He knew that he could come to this house to hide. Uh, that's regardless of her being an old demon. He knew that he would be safe in her house. Interpret the sanctuary cowardice. There was a to-do, Annie, Bill Lowndes explained gently at the garage uh, back over the factory. Fellow trying to steal tires. Obadiah heard a noise and ran out with two or three others. Scared the rascal all right. Fired off his gun and run. We'll allow it to be Jim Hammer. Picked up his cap back there. Never was no count thieving and sly, but we'll get him, Annie. We'll get him. The man huddled in the feather bed prayed silently. Oh Lord, I didn't do it. I didn't go to do it. Not Obadiah, Lord. You knows that. You knows it. And into his frenzied brain came the thought that it would be better for him to get up and go out to them before Annie Poole gave him away. For he was lost now. With all his great strength, he tried to get himself out of the bed, but he couldn't. He is a coward. He's a coward. He's already killed somebody, but he's also the type of person who won't take responsibility. So he's going to use this sanctuary that he premeditated to go to, even though he could save the Bill Lowndes here is the sheriff. He's law enforcement. So there's some aspect of this slide that's missing. But he knows he could go out and turn himself in. He's not going to do that. His sanctuary is cowardice. His sanctuary is whining and cowardice and lying and being a no count trash and premeditating getting other people involved in his mess. And so he couldn't. To me, he refused. The better word would be he refused to go out. But his sanctuary is cowardice. All right, apply the sanctuary racial loyalties. So we're now applying. So don't forget, define, interpret, and apply. So his hunters, however, didn't hear him. Bill Lowndes was saying, "We've been looking for Jim out along the old road. Figured he'd make tracks for Sharboro. You ain't noticed anybody pass this evening, Annie." The reply came promptly, unwaveringly. No, I ain't seen nobody pass, not yet. Jim Hammer caught his breath. Well, the sheriff concluded, we'll be getting along. Obadiah was a mighty fine boy. If they was all like him, I'm sorry, Annie. Anything I can do, let me know. Thank you, Mr. Loud. Annie Poole had come into the room. It seemed a long time before Obadiah's mother spoke. When she did, there were no tears, no reproaches, but there was a raging fury in her voice as she lashed out. Get out of my feather bed, Jim Hammer, and out of my house, and never stop thanking your Jesus. He done give you that black face. So the racial loyalty, even though when confronted with a white man who is sheriff at this time, Bill Lowndes, to reveal where Jim Hammer is, she bases her decision to not tell him where he is on race loyalty, that there's loyalty to the race, in the sense that there will be loyalty implicit in this, is that there will be loyalty to Bill Lowndes and his race. Someone would hide a white man who shot a black man in their house, so she's just sort of returning the favor. If Jesus hadn't given you that black face, you would be out of here. She already said that if he had had a white face, she would have turned him out. So it's instead of doing the right thing in terms of turning him over, because if if he gets away with this, Jim Hammer gets away with this, he's going to feel even more emboldened and escalate his behavior. He was already at a bad way in terms of stealing tires, running, and then shooting somebody, and didn't even know who he shot. He thought he might have shot a white man. Um, so that alone was an appeal to let for Annie Peel to let him come in, because at this time we're still going through the racial tensions of the day. And so to protect our own, we need to go on ahead and let that person come in. But it's the black face that protects him with Annie Poole, that ensures racial loyalty, even if there is a moral issue with it. So, what does sanctuary symbolize? What could it mean? Um, so, movement from one economic position to another, making hasty decisions, appealing for mercy when showing none to others, racial expectations, duty, cultural expectations, cowardice, and then, of course, racial loyalty. I think duty is such uh, a misguided term for people. They always think that they have a duty to someone else. But the thing is, you really have a duty to yourself to make sure that you meet the needs that you need to meet for yourself. And so, putting the needs of other people who are especially criminal in their activity is not good mentally or psychologically, let alone morally. So this is what sanctuary could mean throughout the story. And so these are the works consulted. Um, this is Introduction to Modernism, Nella Larsen's Sanctuary, Harlem Renaissance in two places, Harlem Race Riot. And then the journal article is only available as a PDF in the classroom. It's not available. It's one of those purchased items, or with me being a faculty member, I only have access to it. And so when you upload it, it's uploaded in the classroom, and so you should be able to have access to it. In the journal article, plagiarism and unethical practices. So don't forget Jim Crow, Britannica Jim Crow information, Jim Crow laws, Spanish American War, glossary of literary terms, point of view, entry for Plessy v. Ferguson, Separate Car Act, Emancipation Proclamation, and then the causes and effects of the American Civil War. All right, so here, Nella Larsen resources. There is a Britannica entry, Nella Larsen, American author. Bibliography, there are a lot of bibliography works on Nella Larsen. So there's a JSTOR, which requires a subscription. And then there's Oxford Bibliographies, what you can get some information about, and then but it's going to be restricted after a certain time. Then you have primary and secondary works. This is a site that I think that has a lot more information. And then there's a biography, which is usually in the form of a library guide. So these are Nella Larsen um, resources. All right, this is the end of the lecture. Thank you very much for listening.